good to have you join me on Global News on Zimo, Nigeria. The news says Moscow Navy holds live fire drills in Black Sea. Kiev's use of cluster bombs against Russia effective, says US. US lawmakers file bill seeking accountability for Assad government. EU to provide more weapons to Ukraine, and wildfires reach through Athens, Greece and Italy. Stay with me for these and more stories. On Russia-Ukraine war, Moscow's defense military said Friday Russia's Navy carried out a live-fire exercise in the northwest Black Sea, days after the Kremlin said it would consider ships traveling to Ukraine through the waterway potential military targets. The Black Sea Fleet carried out live firing of anti-ship cruise missiles at the target ship in the combat training range in the northwestern part of the Black Sea, Russia's defense ministry said in a statement on Telegram messaging app. The target ship was destroyed as a result of missile strike, it said. Also, during the joint exercise, the ships and fleet aviation undertook measures to isolate the area temporarily closed to navigation and also carried out a set of measures to detain the offending ship. Russia said on Wednesday that cargo ships en route to Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea will be regarded as possibly carrying military cargo days after scrapping a grain export deal with Ukraine. The Kremlin has also declared unspecified areas in the northwestern and southern parts of the international waters of the Black Sea as temporarily dangerous for passage. Moscow warned of risk to establishing Black Sea shipment routes without its participation. Kiev said it was prepared to continue grain exports through its southern ports despite Russia pulling out of the deal. Still talking Russia-Ukraine war, a senior Washington defense official said controversial cluster munitions supplied by the United States are being used effectively by Ukrainian forces in their counteroffensive against Russia's invasion. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby said, according to reports on Thursday, "We have gotten some initial feedback from the Ukrainians and they are using them quite effectively." Kirby also said the U.S. provided cluster bombs, which are banned by more than 120 countries, were having an impact on Russian defensive formations and the maneuvering of Russia's forces. Citing an anonymous Ukrainian source, the Washington report on Thursday said that Kiev's forces are using cluster munitions against well-fortified Russian positions that have slowed Ukraine's summer offensive. According to reports, Russian frontline positions in the east and south of Ukraine, which have successfully slowed Ukraine's counteroffensive, have been densely mined with anti-tank and anti-personnel mines and tripwires in areas between 4.8 kilometers and 16 kilometers deep, 3 to 10 miles. Cluster munitions are being used to break up Russian trenches, a Ukrainian military said. Washington, D.C.-based think tank, the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, said on Thursday that Ukraine's presidential advisor, Mikhailo Podolyak, had reiterated that the Ukrainian counteroffensive will be slow and difficult but will prevent Russian forces from retaking the battlefield initiative. The U.S. and Ukraine have received broad criticism for the provision and use of cluster munitions on the battlefield, and which have been barred by many countries because of the long-term risk posed to civilians. Human Rights Watch said earlier this month that Russia had extensively used cluster munitions, causing many civilian deaths and serious injuries, while Ukrainian rocket attacks using cluster munitions on the then Russian-occupied city of Izium in 2022 had killed at least 8 civilians and wounded 15 more. The rights group said that both Kyiv and Moscow should stop using such indiscriminate weapons that had killed civilians. Cluster weapons typically release large numbers of smaller bomblets that can kill indiscriminately over a wide area, and those that fail to explode pose a danger for decades after. Now, crimes against humanity, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar congresswomen have introduced a bill urging the United States to support international efforts to hold the government of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad accountable for war crimes and crimes against humanity. On Thursday, in a statement, Tlaib said victims of Syria's civil war have not yet received justice, with perpetrators facing few consequences. Assad's regime committed some of the war's atrocities of the 21st century during the country's civil war that began in 2011. Tlaib said in the statement, These include, but are not limited to, the use of sarin gas and other chemical weapons against civilians, the widespread use of torture and deliberate targeting of civilians with conventional weapons. The bill comes as Arab governments move to bring the Assad regime in from the cold after years of diplomatic isolation, but the U.S., under the administration of President Joe Biden, has insisted that it will not follow on in their footsteps. The Syrian civil war started as a series of revolutions against the repressive policies of the Assad government, but the conflict grew, drawing in numerous foreign powers and militant groups. It has since displaced nearly half of Syria's pre-war population and killed about 500,000 people. Thursday's statement from Taliab and Omar says that their bill is designed to encourage the use to throw its weight behind efforts to create international justice mechanisms to hold the Assad government accountable. The international community has previously established ad hoc tribunals, special courts and other justice mechanisms through the United Nations to bring justice in specific countries where there have been war crimes, their statement reads. Given the sheer number and scale of the atrocities committed during Syria's civil war, an international justice mechanism is clearly necessary. Last month, war crimes investigators included that the Syrian government had deployed Shabiha militias to clamp down on dissent, using methods such as torture and sexual violence against perceived opponents. In June, Syrian survivors of enforced disappearances, which can involve arrests, detentions and abductions done in secret, also called on the United Nations to support efforts to locate the roughly 100,000 Syrians who remain missing and bring perpetrators to justice. Enforced disappearances are considered a crime against humanity under international law. However, as Assad has cemented his control over large swaths of the country, leaders across the Arab world have taken steps to repair ties with the Syrian government that were damaged or broken off during the war. Embarked to Russia-Ukraine war, officials said the European Union is drawing up plans for a 20 billion euros, that's $22 billion fund to deliver Ukraine with weapons, ammunition and military assistance as it fights Russia's invasion. The bloc's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, outlined the four-year proposal to EU foreign ministers meeting in Brussels on Thursday. Following the meeting, he said the EU will transform existing support into a long-term commitment to Ukraine's security and resilience. We propose the creation of a dedicated section on the European Peace Facility to provide up to 5 billion euros a year for the next 4 years for the defense needs for Ukraine, Borrell said. This is the evaluation of the needs and the cost of our long-term security commitments to Ukraine, he added. The proposal came amidst an international drive to give Ukraine long-term security assurances, as announced by members of the G7 group on the sidelines of last week's NATO summit in Lithuania's capital, Vilnius. At that summit, NATO leaders said Ukraine should be able to join the military alliance in the future, but stopped short of offering it an immediate invitation, an outcome that was not what Ukrainian officials had hoped for. Ukraine's future is in NATO, they said in a declaration, but offered no timeline for the process. Mindful of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's disappointment over his hopes for a membership timetable, Western officials stressed that there will be a broader package of support proposals designed to give Ukraine a military edge over Russian forces. At Thursday's Foreign Affairs Council, European Union officials, foreign ministers rather, were shown the fund plan, but a more detailed debate will take place on August 31st at their meeting in the Spanish city of Toledo. Some member states, notably Hungary, may oppose the idea, and final political approval is not expected until European leaders meet at EU summit in October or even in December. The European Peace Facility, EPF, created in 2021, is meant to finance actions that prevent conflict, build peace, and strengthen international security. It was initially worth $6.3 billion but has since grown to $13.4 billion. The facility is used to reimburse EU countries for at least part of the cost of weapons, ammunition, and other military aid that they give to nations outside the bloc. Hungary is still holding up the disbursement of $556 million in current EPF funds for Ukraine aid, demanding that Hungarian bank OTP first be removed from a Ukrainian blacklist. Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó said Budapest would take the same stance with the new proposal. Now on weather and climate, firefighters in Greece are struggling a reignited wildfire that has stoked a series of fresh evacuations as authorities ram up for more of the severe weather that has brought intense temperatures across southern Europe. Authorities had declared the wildfire contained overnight, but firefighters lost control later on Thursday when the winds gathered strength. According to reports, it's day 4 of those wildfires. They had contained the flames, and then as the afternoon progressed, the wind picked up again, and that's when the reigniting of fires happened. The huge fire has already burned 35 kilometers, 13.5 square miles of forest and scrubland. In his newest news briefing on Thursday afternoon, Fire Service spokesman Yanis Artopoulos said there had been 62 forest fires across Greece over the past 24 hours. He added that the severe weather conditions were creating dynamic fire fronts, noting that authorities had issued evacuation orders for numerous areas across West Africa. Some residents ignored the latest orders to try and save their homes. A state of emergency elsewhere in Greece was declared on the island of Rhodes, where firefighters were trying to contain a major blaze that also urged authorities to also evacuate orders for several mountain areas. A major fire was also burning in Lucania on the southeastern part of the Peloponnese Peninsula. Stifling heat across Europe's Mediterranean south created a high or very high risk of fires in Greece, Italy and Spain. Weather forecasts say temperatures could reach 45 degrees Celsius, 113 degrees Fahrenheit on Sunday. Kyriakos Mitsotakis, Greek Prime Minister, said the fire service and civil protection authorities will remain on alert as a new heat wave moved east across the country. And here are more stories. In Africa, Kenya, opposition protests continue over price hike. On Thursday, secluded clashes between police and stone-throwing protesters broke out in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, despite most people mainly ignoring a call by the opposition to increase anti-government protests. Raila Odinga, veteran opposition leader, called for 3 days of demonstrations this week, resulting in 6 deaths and dozens wounded and putting pressure on local hospitals. Olex Ochieng, administrator at Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital in Kisumu, said, and I quote, "Yesterday we received a total of 18 patients, one with a deep cut wound from Kondele, another with tear gas canister injury on the ear, and that was from Chulambo. The other 16 were gunshot injuries. 3 were in critical condition and they were taken to a theater. 1 died while being attended to at the theater. So far, we have taken 5 to the theater for operations and 6 are still on the line for theater." Since March 20th, people have died in protests called by Odinga, who says President William Ruto's government is illegitimate and responsible for a cost of living crisis. Some of the injured say they were caught up in the protest by accident. Eric Otieno is a resident of Kisumu and says he was beaten by police. The police response to the demonstrations has ignited outrage from right groups, with Amnesty condemning the use of excessive force. The protests have improved pressure on a population already battling the galloping inflation. A Chinese man indicted of encouraging children in Malawi to chant racist slogans about themselves in Chinese, a language they did not understand, and then selling the videos on Chinese social networks, has been sentenced and ordered to leave the country. A court judge in the capital, Lilongwe, sentenced 27-year-old Luke to 1 year's imprisonment after finding him guilty of enrolling children for racial exploitation. Masoko Chamkalala, the country's attorney general, said Luke, who was arrested last year, had 7 days to leave Malawi, having already served his 12 months in jail. He is barred from ever returning to the country. In one of Luke's videos, a child aged around 9 was heard saying, "I am a monster with a low IQ." Luke claimed he was targeting to spread Chinese culture in Malawi. The public prosecutor said the Chinese national had paid financial compensation to the victims without specifying the amount. He was detained in June 2022 in Zambia, Malawi's neighboring country, for illegal entry after fleeing Malawi, and was later extradited. The Chinese embassy in Malawi condemned Luke's action, stating that the Chinese government has zero tolerance for racism. I'll bring you more stories just in a moment. Stay with us. welcome back. Here are more stories from Nigeria. NEC discards Buhari's social register. The National Economic Council, NEC, comprising 36 state governors and Vice President Kashim Shettima, has finished the plan for state governments to implement cash transfer programs using state-generated social registers. It said state-generated social registers will better reflect the number of vulnerable Nigerians to be reached with such cash transfer or palliative scheme. This came on the heels of the plan by the government to roll out its intervention actions to lessen the impact of the hardships facing Nigerians following the removal of the controversial fuel subsidy. The NEC had set up a subcommittee at its last meeting, which was tasked with coming up with plans to decrease the harsh economic conditions following the removal of fuel subsidy and the unification of the exchange rates. It states that a better position to do that enumeration to ensure the integrity of the social register, the governor of Ogun State, Dakmo Abiodun, said according to reports after the NEC meeting chaired by Vice President at the Aso Rock Villa, Abuja, on Thursday. Abiodun spoke alongside the governors of Anambra State, Professor Charles Soludo, Bauchi State, Bala Mohammed, and acting CBN Governor Fola Shodun Shonobi. He said state-generated register is aimed at enhancing the integrity and reliability of the National Social Register and ensuring that resources go to the intended beneficiaries. The decision to adopt state-generated cash registers, however, means the governors are dumping the existing National Social Register, which as of 2023 has captured over 61 million vulnerable Nigerians eligible for various government social programs. The NEC also proposed the implementation of a 6-month cash award policy for all public servants. The 6-month cash award policy, Abiodun said, permits subnational entities to pay their public servants a prescribed amount of cash monthly. The implementation of the CAP will be based on the individual capacity and prior of various states, he said. Revealing the feedback of the subcommittee from its last meeting to journalists, Abiodun said NEC explained the significance of the proposed cash award policy for civil servants, payment of outstanding liabilities to civil servants, and providing micro, small and medium enterprises with single-digit interest rates to support business growth, amongst others. Meanwhile, justifying the need for state-generated social registers, the Anambra governor said the existing version compiled by the Buhari administration lacks the integrity to form the basis of the government's intervention. And finally, on the news, diphtheria kills 30, 289 hospitalized in Yobe State. Yobe State government has reported 30 deaths from 289 cases of diphtheria from 6 local councils of the state. Diphtheria, a bacterial infectious disease, is spread among people by direct contact or through respiratory droplets from coughing or sneezing. Yesterday, while announcing the death toll in the Matru, Senior Special Assistant to the Governor on Health, Dr. Mohammed Ghana, revealed that the death toll of 30 were recorded in Potiskum Local Council from 289 reported cases in Gulani, Bursari, Nengere, and the Matru local councils in the state. The active cases have been isolated at specialist hospitals in Potiskum and the Matru, according to him. He noted that 219 diphtheria cases had been treated and discharged from the hospitals. On stopping the spread of the disease, Ghana said that the state government and partners intervene in fighting the outbreak and spread of the disease in affected local government areas. He said, and I quote, "We are strategizing to coordinate a result-oriented means of preventing and managing the disease. This will ensure a diphtheria-free state, including the border areas with Niger," he said, adding that diphtheria affected mainly the zero-dose vaccination households in 5 local councils. He also said the Ministry of Health is identifying the households for vaccination of children under 5 years. There are essential drugs, including diphtheria antitoxin, DAT, being distributed to health facilities in the state. The government, he said, is conducting training of clinical staff to effectively manage cases of diphtheria. Ghana bemoaned that malaria cases were also feared to complicate diphtheria outbreak. He therefore called on stakeholders to embark on massive sensitization of communities on the outbreak and spread of diphtheria. We should concentrate on how to prevent the spread of the disease among communities and the border areas with Niger, he said, reiterating the need for sufficient mobilization of people to immunize their under 5 children. He said the Ministry of Information will embark on result-oriented advocacy, sensitization and mobilization of communities on this very disease. A recap of major stories says Moscow Navy holds live fire drills in Black Sea, gives use of clustered bombs against Russia effective, says US. US lawmakers file bill seeking accountability for Assad government. European Union to provide more weapons to Ukraine, and wildfires rage through Athens, Greece and Italy. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend ahead.